You all have been sitting in here all day. Thank you for coming. So just for the show of hands, so I can get a sense of who's in the room, how many of you are running companies right now? Oh, good. Wow, okay. And how many are running companies that have funding? Awesome. Great. Good. I am Lori Bowler. I joined Facebook in 2008. I graduated from Yale in 1991. Sometimes people ask me if I knew that I always wanted to do this. And the answer is, of course, no, because at the time, Mark Zuckerberg was 6 years old. So did not know this was in my future in any way, shape, or form. So I thought I would talk today about a few things related to people. I'll talk pretty quickly. I'll share some examples from Facebook. And then we'll open up to questions. It's probably the most helpful thing for everybody. Let's see if we can get slides up here. Tap the button in the box. Oh, there we go. Oh, Facebook. Oops, that was the wrong one. Totally the wrong direction. Okay. Great. Okay. So I'm sure you've heard a lot today about product and innovation and probably some things about funding, and all of those things are certainly central to what you need to do. If you're like other people in the Valley, you are spending all of your time thinking about your product and whether you have enough money to get to the next stage. And that is exactly what you need to be thinking about. That's how people like Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Page and others have built their companies, by totally obsessing about the product. But there are other things that you need to think about as well. And I would say that the most important thing is actually your team. Because technology doesn't drive innovation, people drive innovation. And so getting the right people on your team is exactly what's going to do that for you. So I would say that really taking the time to think about that makes a big difference. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about that at Facebook. We've changed a lot over the years. The day that I joined Facebook in June 2008, almost 6 years ago, this is what the site looked like. You can see a couple of things. One, it's on the desktop, which is probably not where most people use Facebook these days. And the second thing is that it was a very different experience from what it is today. At the time I joined, we were celebrating 80 million users, and that felt like a lot at the time. In 2010, our connections looked a little bit like this. And today, it looks more like this. We have about 1.3 billion people using the site around the world, largely on mobile, more than 1 billion users on mobile. It's used in 70 languages every day, and has become sort of part of the daily life of a lot of folks. At that same time, our team looked a little bit like this. We had about 500 people, just under 500 people when I joined. And we were in 3 locations. We were in downtown Palo Alto. We were had a very small presence in New York, a sales presence, and also in London. And today, 6 years later, we have offices in 30 countries, 52 of them, and we have almost 7,000 people. So we've grown by about 14x in terms of our people over that same period of time. This is a shot of our headquarters in East Menlo Park. Has anybody been to campus? Yeah, oh great. So we used to be in downtown Palo Alto. On my very first day, I walked into a very nondescript 70s style building on High Street in Palo Alto. We had about 12 offices in downtown Palo Alto. We spent the entire day running back and forth across downtown to get to meetings. We purposely chose this location because it would allow us to really bring our culture to the location in a way that we weren't able to do in a place like downtown Palo Alto. And we thought that was a really important part of what the new campus would bring to us, not just proximity, but also the ability to bring our culture to that campus. So in this time, we've added really amazing engineers and designers and salespeople, all kinds of people that I didn't even think we would need that day that I entered the office. I actually joined Facebook to run the recruiting team. I came from a marketing role at eBay, and asked, when I sort of reached out to Facebook, said, what's the biggest problem? What can I work on? And they said, oh, we really need help recruiting. We have to build a team. And I thought, that is really not what I expected you to say. And when I walked in on my first day, I asked if I could just try to get my bearings in the organization, and said, okay, great. Can I see the word charts for these 500 people? And everybody laughed and said, we don't have word charts. And we actually still don't have word charts. That part's probably my fault. And then I said, okay, great, well, can I see the hiring plan? And they laughed again and said, the hiring plan is that we're going to hire as many amazing people as we can find. Okay, off to a good start. So, over time, we sort of, we did have a prioritization of what we needed, and it's funny because I think at any point in time, you realize that you have a bottleneck. For us, in the early days, it was that we didn't have enough engineers, and then we didn't have enough designers, and then we didn't have enough mobile engineers, and there's sort of something that you're always missing along the way. So the question is, as you're looking for great people, you will actually find a lot of people who are perfectly well qualified to join your company, but that isn't really enough. You have to find people who share your passion for the things that you're building, who care about the same things that you care about, who are really ready to sort of jump on this ride and this journey with you, because as we've just heard from Rob, it can be a little bit rocky along the way, and you want to be sure that you have people who are sort of tied in with you and who care about the same things you care about. So how do you hire these people in an environment where it seems like everybody has unlimited career options in Silicon Valley? Doesn't it seem that way? I know it feels that way to me. And so, I feel like everyone we meet has lots of different options that they can pursue. And so how do you actually get those people to join? Well, I think that's where your culture really comes into play. Your culture is really just the environment that you're building so that really great people can thrive and succeed and help you push the business forward at any different point in time. So I thought we'd move to a few specifics, just to, some of them are sort of Facebook stories, and then some of them are some thoughts that I had. This is the way that I've seen it. I wasn't at Facebook in 2004, unfortunately, but this is the way I've seen it play out in certain places, and also as we've been watching the industry grow. In the beginning, it's you and your co-founders. You're sitting around in a garage, or in the case of Facebook, in a dorm at Harvard, not at Yale. And you are the culture. The way you work is the culture, the intensity that you bring, the way you collaborate or not, how competitive you are, all of those things define culture. And whether or not you are intentionally building a culture, it is developing organically around you. And it will, in the end, be one of the most important things that you're doing. These are our founders, Dustin, Chris, and Mark. This guy, not this guy. Anyway, back to these guys. They were idealistic and bold. They had a vision of the world in which we're all connected. They worked very intensely. They were very competitive. They were very collaborative. They were open and transparent. They really cared deeply about the mission. They moved fast, and they knew that they had to try new things along the way. They were focused on impact, and amazingly, this is still our mission today. So the mission that they hadn't yet articulated very well, but we're clearly working towards, is exactly the way that we articulate the mission today. And the way that they worked together when they were just in the dorm room is the same way that we work today. These are the values of the organization. We didn't write these down until 2009. But they were not good at technology. What's that? Same button. Bottom middle. Okay. That's why I don't work on the tech side of the business. But these are all the ways that we work today. And when we interview people and when we think about having people join the organization, this is what we talk to them about. We talk to them about the way that we work. We talk to them about the kind of company we are. We talk to them about our mission and what we care about. Sometimes we'll ask, what's your Facebook story? How do you use Facebook yourself? And one interesting thing that we found along the way is that what we really needed was kind of a way to talk about what it meant to work in our culture. And I think that's a really important thing that people don't take the time to do, is to think about how you work in the culture. So, I mentioned that these are our values. These are some real posters that hang on the walls of the 52 offices in 30 countries of Facebook. Oh, fortune favors the bold. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And then there are dozens of them everywhere. And one amazing thing, this is one of my favorites, this journey is 1% finished, proceed and be bold, think wrong. One amazing thing is there isn't one person who's responsible for this around the organization. They just appear on walls everywhere. And then sometimes they sort of raise a debate, that someone will take a picture of one and they'll put it in a Facebook group that we all use, and we'll debate whether or not that's actually in line with the culture. It's a very active conversation about the culture. Also very open and transparent. I think we probably have more Facebook groups at Facebook than we have employees who work there. This is a sign that somebody painted on a wall in the room where we do orientation. This is now your company. I love this sign for a lot of reasons, one of which is that I have no idea where it came from. I have no idea who painted this sign. I have no idea whose idea it was. But the very fact that I have no idea where it came from symbolizes exactly what we want, which is that everybody feels like they own the culture. Everybody feels like it's their company. And as the new people come in, one of the things that we want them to understand is this is now their company. So even though we're 7,000 people, every single person makes a difference and plays a role. This was another one of my favorite signs. Nothing at Facebook is somebody else's problem. And that's really true for every single function, for every single thing that happens around the company. There's nothing where I feel like, oh, that's, the eng team has to take care of that, or that's the legal team's problem, or I don't have to worry about that. Everybody really feels like they share responsibility for things that are happening around the organization, which I think is a really healthy way to be as a company, and really helps people as they enter the company feel like they are part of the company too. So I thought I'd share a few of our traditions. Even when we were 500 people, we had a bunch of traditions and rituals, many of which are still around today. These are some pictures from our hackathons. Hackathons are an all-night event. They usually start with pizza at sunset and end with breakfast in the morning. And the only rule in a hackathon is that you can't work on something that is part of your day job. So you can work alone, you can work in teams, it just can't be something that you normally work on. And it's not about putting together a PowerPoint or a business plan or a case for a new product. It's about actually building product. And it ends in a demo day where you have to get up in front of the whole organization and share what you built. And some things actually ship from this. This is where some of our ideas have come from. Photo tagging came from a hackathon. Facebook video came from a hackathon. There's sort of a long list of new ideas and products that have come out of hackathons. Game day. So game day was around long before I got to Facebook. It's a day that was described to me as, when I first joined, as a day when you were randomly assigned to a team. They give you a color, and you compete intensely and vigorously for a really ugly trophy in a team outing to the Old Pro in Palo Alto. And people take the day really, really seriously, and it's a time when you do come together as a team, and part of what I love about it is that it reinforces the intensity and the competitiveness, but still the collaboration of the culture. And people love the day. They meet new people. You stay on the same color the whole time that you're at Facebook, so you kind of reunite with people that you haven't seen in a while. Now we hold game day in New York and London and Dublin and lots of other offices as well. Our next one is coming right up. Friday Q&A. So Mark hosts a weekly Q&A. It's every Friday from 4 to 5 o'clock. It's happening in about an hour. Thousands of people join from all the offices around the entire world, and some of the folks who are in Asia watch it together on Monday because it's just not a great time for them. But our offices in Seattle and all over the US and Austin and all different kinds of places will join. And Mark starts with a summary of the week, and then he opens it up for questions. And the one thing that we really do is we encourage that people ask real questions, that they bring out the hard questions, that they aren't just kind of throwing softballs to him, so that everybody on the team has a chance to respond. I love it for a couple reasons. One is there are a lot of people who will never meet Mark, who now work at Facebook with 7,000 people across 30 countries. And it gives them a way to sort of connect with him. He's still a carrier of culture. He still sort of defines the culture that we work in. And it also really holds us all accountable for the things that we are doing in the organization, because we all get asked questions about things that we've done, decisions we've made, things that are happening in the organization. Okay, moving on to the people. This is one of our recruiting t-shirts. So how do you find the right people at each stage? I'd say it's not a science. It's a little bit more of an art, although over time we'll build an operation. So from what I've seen, it looks a little bit like this. First, it's just you and maybe a couple of co-founders. Usually these are friends of yours. And then you hire your friends, and they hire their friends. And before you know it, you have 100 people working at the company. And these are all people that you may know their names, you might be able to say hi to them, you might know a couple of things about them. You're still at a place where you can communicate pretty easily across the organization, but you don't exactly know what every single person is working on. So what happens next? Well, if things are going well, you keep hiring. And before you know it, you're at 500 people. And by the time you get to 500 people, you can't be involved with all the hiring yourself. So at this point, you need to actually rely on the other people you've hired to go out and find the right people. So the most important thing that can happen between this stage and the next is that you've established a really strong culture. You've actually taken the time to talk about it, think about it, take an hour out of your day, work with your leadership team, talk to the people who are already working at the company, write a few things down, stick them in a drawer. Come back to them again and again as you're hiring, because these are your North Star as you are continuing to build and grow the team. And then you have to start finding ways to sort of make sure that you're still on the track that you mean to be on in terms of your culture. Are you working in the way that you value? Are you working on the things that matter? Is everybody working the same way? Does everybody understand what the mission is? How do you move on in that way? So I thought we would talk about a few of the basics in sort of getting from 500 to 5,000, I guess it was, from start to up. And I think some of those things are things that you've already heard from lots of other people and are not the reasons you came today. Like A players hire A players. And you always want to hire someone who's better than you, which, I mean, who's better than you? So, but these are a few things that we learned along the way that I thought were helpful, so I thought I would just share them. They're probably not the kinds of things that you hear otherwise. The first is define your recruiting brand. So in 2008, it wasn't a great time for Facebook as a business. It's very vivid in my mind, but the press was terrible. It said things like, there's no business model, they don't know what they're doing, the guy's 23, they have no idea how to make money, it's not going to be around in a year. Really hard to hire people when that's what the press says. So what we found out was that when people were coming to campus, which was our 12 buildings in downtown Palo Alto, and actually meeting people, they were really excited about Facebook and were eager to join. But that doesn't scale well, because you can't just bring everybody to Facebook, and also some people weren't calling us back. It's like I have lots of messages and emails where I was sending out notes saying we'd love to talk to you at Facebook, and nothing was coming back at all. So we thought, we have to put some words to this, because there's some great stuff happening here, but people just don't know what that is because we can't get the word out. So I came from a marketing background, so the one thing I actually knew how to do was marketing. So I thought, all right, well, let's put some words to this and sort of create a brand. It was so helpful. I went around the company, I talked to dozens of people in one-on-one conversations, and what I kept hearing was, I love to build, I love to hack, I love to hack, I love to hack. And hack was not a word that was particularly popular in common parlance at that time. I mean, it was sort of actually a negative connotation. I was nervous about it. I was kind of anxious that that was the word that everybody kept using internally. But that was definitely the culture, and that was definitely the word that people were using. So we decided to embrace that as our brand for recruiting. And we started taking our hackathons out into the world and doing them on university campuses, and we started doing tech talks where we were using this terminology. We sort of took it out to the streets. We started using it when we were doing press, and it sort of started to catch on. It's caught on enough now that I feel like it doesn't even differentiate us anymore, because now everybody uses this terminology. I'd say the second thing that's really important to remember is everyone is a recruiter. Everyone in your organization is a recruiter, and everyone you meet is a candidate. So by the time you get to 500 people, you may have a small team of folks who are really just sort of coordinating the recruiting activity. They're kind of sourcing candidates, they're bringing people in, they're scheduling interviews. But that's not going to be enough. That's not going to help you grow, particularly when you're growing really, really quickly. So what we found is that we took our recruiting brand and all of those words, and we made sure that everybody in the company knew how to describe to somebody who didn't work there what it was like to work there. What's the mission? What's the culture? What are we working on? Why is it exciting? Why is it compelling? Why are you here? And once you do that, you kind of arm everybody with all of that information. Everyone becomes a recruiter. And what you notice is they come back on Monday morning after a weekend, and they'll say things like, I met this guy at a party who runs sales at a small startup in the city, and I think he might be a candidate. And we would say, he is a candidate. What's his name? How do we get in touch with him? And, you meet all of these people that way. I mean, you just don't know enough people to hire them all or to grow your company fast enough. But once you sort of have 500 recruiters who are all the people who work at your company, they're your best ambassadors, and you find that all of a sudden people do start coming in, and you can grow pretty well from there. And then the last thing is invest in onboarding. So we were growing really, really fast, and one of my big concerns with growing the team that quickly was that people were not going to stick, or they weren't going to understand what it really meant to work at Facebook. And we're a very casual company. We're not very formal, which means there aren't a lot of formal communication channels, which means that if you don't know anybody working there and you're not in the information flow, it makes it hard to get your job done. It makes it hard for you to sort of stick. And so we decided that onboarding was not going to be about getting your computer and filling out your benefits paperwork and finding out where the bathroom was. Onboarding was going to be a 2-day, really intense experience in which all the leaders of the company come through and they talk to you about the mission and the culture and what it means to work at Facebook and leaving your prior cultures behind so that you can work and thrive in this environment. And that's still what we do today. And Chris Cox, who's our head of product, still speaks at onboarding for an hour every single Monday when we hold it in Palo Alto, in Menlo Park. And we also fly people from other countries who are starting in our other countries to Menlo Park so that they can really understand the culture. They stay there for about a week. And then in the engineering organization, we have 6 weeks of boot camp, which does largely the same thing, but also introduces engineers to the code base. And over time, all of the different functions have sort of developed their own extended onboarding so that we can make sure that people really understand the context of what they're walking into, particularly on the culture front. So with that, I would just bring us back to the combination of people and culture and say that I really think that this is the foundation of what you're doing and what you're building. I think what you'll find, and what Rob even alluded to, was that over time your strategy may change, over time you may have to pivot, over time the competitive landscape will change. But what you'll find is that if your culture is really strong and if it's the right culture for your organization, it will help you be sure that in 100 years people are still talking about your company. Thank you.
About the decision-making process. So as you grow the company, more people get more managers. How do you stay nimble? You mentioned hackathons, you come up with a good hackathon project. How does that become a reality?
Yeah. Am I doing something wrong? No. The hackathons in particular, it's a merit-based, everybody sees what you built, and then we decide whether or not it fits in the roadmap or whether something should come later or not at all. And the people who attend the hackathons are the eng leadership and the entire engineering organization, and sometimes some of the business side folks go as well. And they kind of sit down, the leadership team will sit down and talk about the ideas that they saw and give feedback to all of the different teams. And decision making actually has been, one of the things that we decided early on was that in order for us to grow, you had to just give context to everybody who was working there and let people make decisions as well as they can in the organization. We still encourage that, and what you find is that it's actually better to make a decision quickly but make the wrong decision than to have it sort of lingering through layers of an organization trying to get to the right answer on something the first time. And so we encourage people just to make decisions, and we encourage them to sort of raise their hands quickly when it was the wrong decision so they can go back and sort of take another path. But what we found is that we use the management structure largely as a way to provide some organization and efficiency to the way that people work and the communication channels. But it's used, we try to use it a little less simply for decision making, so that you're not waiting several weeks for a decision to be made. Yes?
So if you would take a Facebook from 5 people to 50 and 500 to 7,000 or whatever, are many of these concerns pretty translatable, or would you have thought things through very different?
In terms of the culture piece of it?
Culture and hiring.
Yeah, I think they did exactly what you do from 5 to 50, which is you hire the people you know. You hire people who sort of come to you through friends or through your investors, or, it's like people will hand you people when you're that size, or you can kind of reach out into your own network and ask around. It's when you get to about 100 that you can't reasonably do that anymore. You have to actually try to do something else. But I think, if you think about if I think about the first 50 or 100 people who were there, some of them are actually still at Facebook. And they all came in through some, I was Mark's TA, I was in the dorm next door, I had a house in Los Altos near theirs, Jim Breyer sent me over. It's like sort of all of those kinds of stories in those very early days. Yes?
So when you're going from 5 to 50 and hiring, those people that kind of close and friends, like you showed in the picture of the 3 men, and how do you prevent it from being most of the friends of Harvard, Yale, men, people 3 end up being whiter Asian,
Yeah.
Yale and Harvard grads and having only that.
Yeah, so this is a real problem in Silicon Valley, actually. And I think in the very early days, it's hard to solve that. But once you get to a reasonable size, you can actually, you have a team of people that's out looking for other people. And then what you find is you are meeting people that nobody knows. You are looking for someone who has a particular expertise or experience at another company where you're like, someone from this company surely knows how to do this. And then you're doing the things other people are doing. You're looking at the LinkedIn profiles, you're looking at, you're asking around, you're reading, you're reading press, who's speaking at which conferences, who's checking in code at GitHub, you're sort of out looking at the digital footprint. And it's at that point that I think you start to meet a lot of new people. And it's really interesting. I mean, those perspectives really make a difference in the product that you're building. When you have just a few people who all have the same background and think the same way, you come out with a product that is almost made for that group of people. And with 1 billion people, you just can't do that anymore. And so, we, even at 500 people, when I joined, had a lot of people who were from different parts of the country. And, we sort of, Mark never graduated from Harvard, so we aren't a company that really puts a lot of stock into education, and sort of certainly not to your degree. And so we were out looking for the people that, and also, it's really hard when you're small and when the press is bad to get people to come over from other companies. And so we were out looking for the people that were sort of under rocks somewhere. At one point, there was like, one of the engineers had just for fun put an eng puzzle out on the site, on the web somewhere. And what they found was that there were a bunch of people from all over the country and all over the world who sort of found that puzzle and were solving it just because they enjoyed it. They thought it was fun and kind of a cool thing to do. And they kind of built this little community around people who were solving puzzles, not as a recruiting tactic. But at some point they were like, hey, these people are actually good engineers. We should call them. And so some of them actually came and worked at Facebook. And one of them, I think, before I joined, was sort of very famously a guy who was working, I think, at like the DMV in Maine somewhere. And got a call from some guy at Facebook and was like, I don't even know what Facebook is. I've never been to California. And he was with us for a long time. And so I think, you just have to get creative because your network only goes so far. And I think it's just in your network that you might find that. But once you kind of get out into the world, so you have a better opportunity. It doesn't solve the real problem, which is that there's a basic supply and demand mismatch for technical roles, and particularly for women in those roles. So you have to work harder to fill your pipeline with women, for example.
We've got time for one more question.
Who's in the back?
So, you touched on building culture by having these hackathons and these game day kind of activities. I'm curious to know how you align culture and, I guess, motivating factors against disparate organizations within the company. So, like a sales team versus an engineering team. And to add to that, how you align a team that is in disparate locations. Mm-hmm. So if you have an engineering team around the world or a sales team around the world.
So I think anybody who works at Facebook would tell you that we build everything for engineers and designers and product folks, and then we assume that whatever we build is going to work for everybody else. So we've built it's a very technical culture. It is very focused on the technical population, and we do things that are specifically designed for that group of people. And then what we find is that, this is about building an ecosystem. Really strong people in business or law or finance want to be where the great technical talent is, because that's where the great products are being built. So they come anyway, knowing we're very open and honest in the process that we optimize for the technical folks in the organization. And then as we started opening offices, I don't even know whose idea this was, but we started sending out landing teams to those offices. So we would take a group of 3 to 5 people who were already working in Palo Alto, who had been at the company for a while, and we would send them to Hyderabad, to Dublin, to wherever, and they would stay there for 6 months to a year, sometimes a couple of years, and they were responsible for building the culture and the hiring, and for all the sort of the first hires. And what we told them was, it needs to be the Facebook culture. You're going to have to be sensitive to the local cultures of those locations. But it is really interesting. If you go to any of our offices, you feel like you're at Facebook. You know, I actually just saw a video that was taken with a bunch of people at all the different offices around the world, and I couldn't tell by looking at the video which office they were all in. So, you know, I think over time, and we did that for all of our offices, and even now in London, we have some, you know, some of our senior engineers who are there opening the London office, which has been, you know, we've had engineers there for now for a year and a half or so, are still from our offices here. And, you know, they'll eventually come back and hand it off to the local team. But it really helped to infuse the culture globally.
Great, that's it. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.